that have really made an impression on me over the years. I don't get as much of a chance to read other people's stuff now because writing my own stuff is pretty time-consuming, and I still have a day job. I still own my own marketing firm. But, wow, in science fiction and fantasy, I love Mercedes Lackey and David Drake and Stephen Brust and Joel Rosenberg and David Eddings and, of course, Tolkien and Anne Rice, and that's just for starters.
What inspiration would you have, or what words of advice would you have for young budding authors listening to us tonight?
Wow, I think the best thing you can do is just never give up. Keep writing. The longer you write, the better you'll get at it. Find a circle of friends who are very supportive and start telling them stories. That's really the way I started. I started writing for the amusement of a handful of 3 or 4 friends, and that helped me learn how to become a better writer. When I was in high school and middle school, I was very into writing fan fiction, which is a great way to practice. That's where, if you have a favorite TV show or a favorite movie, you write your own episodes for it. And that's a fun middle ground because the characters and the situations are already developed. You just get to work on plot and development. So it's a great practice ground. And gradually, what I wrote got better, and the circle of friends got broader, and finally got to the point where I felt confident that it was good enough to take it to the world.
Now, is it harder or easier to write the second book in the series?
I think it's easier because you at least know how the whole publishing cycle works. The story was very fully fleshed out in my imagination, so I knew where the plot was going. But even then, there are details that surprise me while I'm writing it, or things that come to mind that I really hadn't planned on putting in, but now they make sense, so they're there. It's very much a fully imagined world for me, so coming up with what's going on in it really isn't tough.
Tell me, what was it like the very first time you held one of your books in your hand?
Oh, absolutely amazing. It's up there with giving birth. You asked about advice for a budding writer.
Yeah.
For years, we're probably talking about 20 years here, whenever I would walk into a bookstore, it was a ritual for me to find the science fiction shelves and find the place on the shelf, normally right next to George R.R. Martin, where my book would have been. And I would put my hand on the shelf in that space and close my eyes and say to myself, mine's going to be here someday. So I can tell you that the first time last February that I walked into a Borders Books and I put my hand out and my book actually was there was an amazing experience.
You're already working on Book 3, scheduled for a 2009 release. Can you tell us anything about it?
Yeah, in fact, it's already in first draft, so actually it's about first and a half draft. I'm about halfway through the second draft of it, so it's coming along real well. It will pick up immediately after The Blood King, and there's a big mess to clean up. There's been a usurper king, and there's been quite a bit of upset, and I think one of the fascinating threads in the third book, which at least tentatively we're calling Darkhaven, is that there are moments in history after which nothing is ever the same again. And sometimes things that wouldn't have upset the apple cart under normal conditions just suddenly now take down the whole house of cards. And in the case of the Winter Kingdoms, Jared's coup was one of those moments. And so it will continue to have repercussions not only for the main country, Margoland, but for the rest of the kingdoms as well. And, of course, with a title like Darkhaven, you can be guaranteed we're going to spend a lot more time in that landholding, which is the sanctuary for the vampires. We'll be seeing a lot more of them.
All right. Tell me, you're a Penn State alumni, the university behind the Paranormal State TV show. Did you ever have any experiences on campus with the buildings that are reportedly haunted?
Well, everybody knows not to go up in the stacks at Petit Library at night, way back there. And, you know, if you've ever been up in a college university library, they're huge buildings, and the stacks are the older books and the less commonly used books. So they're up on a third or fourth floor. There's nobody up there. It's completely quiet. Creepy quiet. You know, there's no foot traffic. It's only really hardcore researching grad students who ever go up there. And the rumor has it that many, many years ago there was a grad student who was murdered up in the stacks in Petit. I don't know whether that's actually true or not, but the rumor persists, and I don't think that there's anybody who's gone to school on main campus that hasn't heard about it. So since I was a grad student, I felt well warned to stay out of the stacks late at night. And there's some other buildings as well that are reportedly haunted either by students or faculty that just can't let go of tenure.
And how many people actually have encounters with these entities, or are they just a gimmick?
I have no idea. I mean, they certainly add to the campus culture. Mm-hmm. I never knew anybody personally who had seen one. It's creepy being up there. I can imagining that you've seen something. You know, it is kind of the perfect setting. If somebody knocked you off up there, nobody'd find you for days. So, you know, your mind starts playing tricks on you and thinking, well, you know, that could really happen up here. But I never met anybody who actually had seen one.
Now, with all the TV shows on haunted locations, historic ghosts, channeling spirits, and magic, the paranormal, you know, it's becoming normal. You know, how does that affect fantasy?
I think it's a wonderful thing for fantasy because it really kind of brings it into the mainstream. You know, many years ago, people who wrote about rockets and space flight were just absolutely crazy because everybody knew that sort of thing would never happen. Well, you know, we now have at least had some experience with rockets and space flight to say, well, okay, maybe they weren't totally crazy. And I think, you know, fantasy pre-Harry Potter and, you know, maybe before about the last 10 years was really one of those things that you only kind of admitted after a secret handshake to folks that you read because...
Either that or half a 40-ouncer of Jack Daniels.
Yeah. You really had to be in the club before you'd admit that you read that stuff to people. And now, you know, I think Harry Potter was a terrific door opener for a lot of people who may have just read it because it was so popular and then said, hey, this stuff isn't half bad, and gone on to find more in the genre. But between the TV shows, you know, I've got a daughter who absolutely loves Charmed reruns. You know, all of those TV shows that, whether they've got an angel or a ghost or someone with magical powers, you can't turn a channel without finding it anymore. So I think it's exposed a lot of people to something and brought it out of the weird fringes into, hey, this stuff's pretty cool.
Do you see the television shares going the same way they did with every fad, that in a couple of years it's just going to be dead again and nobody's going to be talking about it?
Well, I think everything is, you know, kind of a fad and it comes and goes. But once you've exposed people to something, if they find out that they like it, they're going to keep coming back for it, even if the fad moves on. So people who discovered fantasy fiction because they saw the Harry Potter movies or they watched Charmed or they watched, you know, Touched by an Angel or something on TV, you know, they're probably going to stay with that genre after the fad is gone. And I think these things kind of come and go in cycles, so I imagine if it does die down for a while, no pun intended, it'll be back up. You know, something else will trigger and it'll come back around. You know, kind of like shoulder pads.
Now you've got go away. You've got a busy book tour coming up. Can you tell us about it?
Sure. I am doing a lot of signings in North Carolina in February, and of course I'm based in Charlotte, so that's kind of home turf stomping ground. Then in March, I'm going to be at the Phoenix Renaissance Festival. And I found out last year that Renaissance festivals, amazingly enough, are very popular with people who also like to read fantasy adventure. That I gambled on that and turned out to be right. So I'm going to be at the Phoenix Renaissance Festival in March. I'll be at the RavenCon Science Fiction and Fantasy Convention in Richmond, Virginia in April.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be at Balticon in Baltimore, Maryland in May. And then I'll also be at Con Carolinas in Charlotte the last weekend in May. And today I just received my invitation to be a guest author at DragonCon in Atlanta over Labor Day weekend. And then I'll be back at the Charlotte Renaissance Festival in October.
All right, you're busy lady. You've got another book on the go. You go to all these festivals. You go to all these conventions. Where do you find time for you?
Well, fortunately, I really, really love the writing, and I'm pretty well organized. Don't forget, I also run a business, and I've got 3 kids, and I teach for a university. Just thought I'd mention that. I'm really well organized. And believe it or not, I do pretty much knock off work around 5:30 or 6 and spend the evening with the kids. Now, we may be sitting around watching Babylon 5. That was my big Christmas present this year was I got all 5 seasons of Babylon 5 on disc. So I'm now loving catching up on that.
That was one of the classics, wasn't it?
Oh, it was very well plotted. The characterizations were great. Mm-hmm. And I'm finding that watching it the second time through is just as good. So, big surprise. I've got a whole family that loves reading science fiction and fantasy. They'll all be coming with me to DragonCon. They don't make it to all of the conventions with me, but my teenage daughter went on book tour with me last year when we did Pennsylvania and Ohio. And so, and they're, my husband and my 2 older kids are my best proofreaders. They read the drafts. They give me their quite candid feedback, and they're extremely helpful. So it's kind of a family business.
I was going to ask you what the rest of the family thinks of your success as an author.
Well, I am absolutely thrilled that it's something my 2 teenagers are very proud of. If you have teenagers, you know that sometimes those moments are few and far between.
Oh, tell me about it, yeah.
My kids are very happy to recommend the books to their friends, and I'm absolutely thrilled with that. They've been to book signings with me, many of them, and they're all real good at setting up the tables and engaging people in conversation. And so, as I said, it's really kind of become a family
business. All right, stand by, Gail. You and I have to take our final break for this hour. My name's Rob McConnell, and this is the X-Zone on the Talkstar Radio Network. Gail Martin's our special guest. www.chroniclesofthenecromancer.com is her website, and she's the author of The Summoner and The Blood King in the Chronicles of the Necromancer series. I'll be back on the other side of this break with Gail Martin. Still to come on tonight's show, we have Robert W. Morgan, I have William Federer, and, of course, Patrick Cook with the Cook Report. We're coming to you live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network, as well as on X-Zone TV. If you go to www.xzonetv.com, you can watch and listen to our show live Monday through Friday right here on Talkstar.
Do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more? Get ready for a toll-free number to Associated Tax Relief. Associated Tax Relief has helped others settle their tax debt with the IRS for mere pennies on the dollar. Associated Tax Relief's accountants, attorneys, and tax preparers are experts at negotiating with the IRS to settle your debt and put an end to the letters, wage garnishment, and hassles. In fact, the IRS is offering you a one-time opportunity to pay your tax debt for less than what you owe. You owe it to yourself to find out how you could save literally thousands of dollars on your tax debt by calling for a free consultation. There's absolutely no cost or obligation for this free tax consultation. Get the facts on how Associated Tax Relief can help you settle your debt with the IRS. Call now, 800-655-3298. Don't wait another minute. Call for your free consultation at 800-655-3298. That's 800-655-3298. 800-655-3298.
Whether it's the arrival of Planet X in 2012, the Earth's crazy weather cycles, our deadly global warming, Armageddon, UFOs, ETs, terrorism, the critical mass 2008 presidential elections, Dr. Jason Rand talks the talk and walks the walk. Being a twice-nominated Grammy record producer, recording artist, publisher, lecturer, UFO ET researcher and investigator, and best-selling author of The Return of Planet X,